Alright, so method number two, which would be cropping the images. So same thing as for using the slicing tool. What you're going to do is open up the file, make sure that you have your rulers available and your grid lines with control colon. And then from there, the only image that we're going to use the cropping method on is this top logo here, and the main reason is that it's extremely segregated from the rest of the design, as well as we know we can just wipe out the entire background. We don't need to worry about keeping anything other than that little shadow that's on there and the actual images. And in the last video you'll see how to do these by making new files, and those will pretty much be all of our images in this. So this method's a little bit easier. It starts off fairly similar to the slicing method, where rather than using the slicing tool fifth down from the top in the toolbar, we're going to be using the crop tool. And this, you'll notice it'll give you dancing ants that you can start dragging all over the place. And we're going to actually hit cancel for the time being, only because we don't want to alter anything just yet. We're going to click on the arrow, and it's actually very good at prompting you. So if you draw a box here and you're wrong, you can just go right click on it and hit cancel. You're back to normal. Or if you do it and then you go back to a different tool, it'll give you a little prompt. So it's pretty easy to not mess it up too badly. So we're going to use the arrow tool at the top first, and we're going to drag these guidelines. We're going to do something similar to what we were doing with the other slicing tool before, and we're just going to make sure that we kind of lay everything out nicely. Now in this method you can really mess around with the grid lines. If there's too many like grid lines, you can start pulling them out just so you can see your image a little bit better. But the first thing we're going to do is zoom in, and we're going to go as tight on the pixels as possible. So what you can notice here is that it looks like we have a few pixels. I'm going to go just a little bit out. And same thing with this. On the bottom side, do the same thing. On this side, I'll leave that as is for now. And up here is alright for the time being. So once I have those 4 lines placed in, I can just grab this crop tool, and you can either drag the corners inwards, or you can just do the same thing that you were with the slicing tool and drag it over the area that you want to cut out. And this will eventually be your actual slice. So you can notice that it's giving you a little crop preview right now. And you can also see that in your info palette you can see the exact sizing of this slice, and this we can finesse a little bit after. So I'm going to double click on that, and that's actually going to slice the image. And in this method, it's removing everything from around it. There's nothing around this area. We want to choose the arrow so we don't mess with the crop anymore. We can actually turn off the grid lines with control colon, because we don't need those either. And what we're looking at is like there's nothing really around here. It's the kid's head's chopped off. It just wipes everything out. So it makes it easy when you're slicing out images and slicing out specific areas that you know you'll need to resave, or you might need to rejigger a little bit in the future. But you're just going to zoom in on this method. The first thing we're going to do is clean out the layers. So again, with the arrow tool, we're going to get auto select selected. We're just going to click on the areas and then hit the delete button, or you can also drag the actual layer that's highlighted and drop it in the trash can. Both will do the same thing. Same thing with the folders. So you can just wipe out anything that you don't need. We know we don't need this page background. We can see if it's going to affect anything. Toss it. Same thing with this background. See if it's going to affect anything. Toss it. Actually, this is a good case where you can notice a little lock here and you aren't able to delete. You'll also not be able to hit delete at all. So in cases like this, and it's normally with the initial background layers, you can double click and see that message, or that just tells you that this little lock that's available right here at the top of the layers panel as a property, you can just pop off, and that'll allow you to hit delete and remove that file afterwards so the file's no longer locked. We can also go and wipe out all of these additional ones, so same thing with this. You need to make sure the layer's turned on so you can actually turn that off. And if you hold shift and click multiple layers, you can grab multiple ones. If you click one and hold control, you can click separate layers. So just, if you know you're going to need to delete a few all over the place, you can just do it that way. This you can go like this, and we're going to just wipe out everything. So bottom icons, extended footer, kit illustrations, just get rid of everything. So this is the only folder we actually need the titles, and that's going to be all of our layers in there. Get rid of the rest of these. So now we have a nice clean slice if we ever have to do anything ever again with it. So the next step is to just tighten up around the edges. So what we're going to actually do is grab the box tool or the shape tool, and that's U, but I have a few additional random settings on. You want to make sure that stroke is turned off. These are newer features in CS6, but we want to make sure that it's set as shape rather than path or pixels. Path will give you something similar to the marquee tool as dancing ants. Pixels will be a rasterized image. We don't necessarily need it rasterized. So once I have that tool set up, I'm going to double click on this foreground color. So it's always the one on top. And just in this top corner, you can actually swap the colors around by clicking these two buttons or hit the default little icon there, which will give you white and black automatically. But I'm going to just go to some horrible color that is going to make all of this pop off. Pink's normally one of my favorites to do this. So I'm just going to cover up the area. I'm going to use the arrow tool to just get that, and you can also hit Control T to transform this box to just drag it to exactly what you need, and then double click and you're back to normal. So at this point we're going to drag this pink layer under our promotional title. So you're just going to click and hold on the layer, just drag it right down to the very bottom, and that'll put it right under there. So this is going to show us any inconsistencies or issues with the actual slice since we're using it on transparency. And what you'll notice right here is there's already something showing up that we don't want, and it'll also let us get a little bit closer to these edge lines. So the first thing we're going to do is try and get rid of this thing that we don't want. And if we drag the layer, we can see that you can actually go back and hit Control Z or just go into the history and hit layer order to make sure that the move is gone. But what we need to do here is click on this layer once. We can now see that it's this layer here, and this icon here means it's a smart object. So if you double click specifically on the icon, you can go and edit that specific slice of the text. This one pops up in Illustrator because it's a vector. I'm going to ignore that. But basically what we need to do, so you don't have to mess around with the vector file, is you're going to take the marquee tool. You're going to try, first thing you're going to do is try and drag a box over that area that is causing the issue. And then you're just going to, as you make sure you're on the layer, you're going to hit delete. And this gave us an error message because it's a smart object. And when you hit something like this, there's another way of cleaning it up a little bit. So I'm just going to start at the other end, and we're going to highlight the area that we want to keep instead. And so if you highlight that, you can leave it on this layer still. And then there's this icon down here, which is mask object, or add layer mask. And that's going to show up as a little icon like this, just a black area for whatever you're able to see. So black means gone, white means available. We're just going to click that on, and that's going to wipe it out for us. So that way we don't have to worry about messing around with it too much. It's just a couple clicks of the button and it's gone. The next detail we're going to look at is getting this as close and as tight as possible. So we're going to just zoom in, starting at the top. And I'm going to use the guide to see where we're starting. So we're starting at 0. And I'm going to zoom as close as I can into this image, just to make sure I'm not losing any of these little pixels. So you can notice that there's a color difference in that one. And I'm just going to drag and drop it in that area. And then I'm going to click and hold the hand tool and drag my screen along to check out where it's hitting on this E, and you can notice that there's no color difference here. So I'm going to make sure that I drag it here. So I now know that I need to lose 2 pixels on the top, 2 pixels on the right. I'm going to go and do the same thing with the bottom of this. You can notice the shadow on there, so you can do that. I'm going to lose 2 pixels on the bottom, and this one I'm going to lose 1 pixel. So normally when I do this, I'm writing down the notes just of how many pixels I need to drop off of the element. So it's going to be, this one's going to be 1 pixel because you can actually see a bit of that shadow coming in over here. As it's on the pink, this one doesn't matter as much as it works. And then we're going to double click on the magnifying glass again, and we're just going to zoom in to a decent point. And I'm going to get rid of the grids again. Now what we're going to do is transform the canvas size. So this, for this, is going to just tighten it up based on the pixels for us using some happy little math. And we're going to just go to image and click canvas size. And it's going to give us this prompt. So the way this prompt works is for web, you always want to make sure it's set up as pixels. You don't need to click relative, otherwise it's going to start from the top corner and go downwards. You can actually just do it with this element here. So if you know you need to lose just 2 pixels on the bottom, you can click that it's going to start at the top center. And that way it's only going to crop from the bottom. And also with this canvas size method, it's not going to act like cropping. It's going to just shift how the canvas is being viewed. So you don't have to worry about wiping out anything crazy. So we're going to start off with this one in the center because we need to lose a few pixels on every side. So you're going to go in and we need to lose 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, so this becomes 380. And then, no, this one, that does not become 380. This one becomes 381 because we're going for width and we need to lose 3 pixels. So 1 off this side, 2 off this side. And then height, this one's going to lose the 4, so we're looking at 137. And you can see what your exact pixel size was. Normally calculators help if you need some extra effort. So never really worry about this message. It excuse me, it's cropping the file, not really messing around with it, so you can just hit proceed. And what you can notice is the sides are pretty good as is. Now the one issue is with doing 3 pixels, it's not going to do it perfectly for you. So you can notice it took the 3 pixels off the one side and left this one here. So in this case, we're going to just grab this titles folder so we get everything all at once. And we're just going to move it left and right. Actually, it did a pretty good job. So you can see the difference, or differentiation in just these 2 very minor pixels. Those will actually, if you cut them off, it makes the image look a little bit funky. So we want to make sure that we can keep as much of that as possible, and you can notice that it did a good job of cutting off the E as well, so we don't actually have to change this at all. So we're going to double click on the magnifying glass, and then click on the arrow tool. And from here, I'm going to close up the folders just to clean up my file a little bit. At this point, you can save the PSD slice. The other thing we're going to do is just turn off this layer so we don't see the pink anymore. We get the nice transparent background. And then it's going to be the same method as what we did with the slice tool, where you go to File, Save for Web. You don't have to double click on it because there is no technical slice. It's going to save it out as whatever you need it to be. but in this case, we're going to optimize at 15.76. We're going to try PNG 8. You can see that it really messes with the shadow, and normally PNG 8 isn't that great for transparency. So you want to make sure if there's a shadow or something that isn't completely a solid color, that PNG 24 is on. If you try GIF, you can get the same thing as PNG 8. It's no better quality than PNG 8. JPEG is going to give you a white background. If that's what you need, that's what you need. In this case, PNG. So I'm going to hit save. I'm just going to put it in that same images folder as last time. But this method, you can just drop it in, or name the file and drop it in wherever you need. So I'm going to name this the SRC logo. And I'm going to make sure that it's EN because there's also a French version of this site. So this one, no slices. Don't have to worry about any of those settings, just save it out. Minimize. Oh yeah, this is what it shows up as if you open it in Illustrator. So we don't actually need that open. So go into images, and what you can see is we have our new slice now. And everything is dandy with it. So that's pretty much the cropping method. Again, really easy for single slices, really easy for things that you know you're going to need again in the future. And that's pretty much it. The next way that we'll be doing it is creating new files, and it's more creating a new file is more for sprites as well as content images. So that video will be coming very soon. Thanks.